A Bit of a Nessie Business, Part 2. The boathouse was half rotted, draughty, and smelled of algae, diesel, and something that might once have been a sandwich. Molt stepped inside, set his bag on a crate, and immediately drew a sigil on the doorframe with one claw. The glyph shimmered faintly. Anyone approaching would suddenly decide they had something better to do. A small, practical reptile folk walled the not today charm. Ginny hovered near the doorway, humming tunelessly. Her dead pigeon, who Molt had decided to call Mr. Feathers, perched on a beam overhead, flapping more than usual and attempting to chat with a gull that had wandered in through a hole in the roof. The gull stared at him, baffled, then pecked at the air experimentally. Molt eyed the pigeon. Even as a ghost, Mr. Feathers had always been, well, dead, still, motionless, a memory with wings. But now, he flapped, he hopped, he cooed at things. Ginny's grounding was strengthening him, turning him now and again into a living ghost. A corpse ghost one moment, a fluttering half-alive echo the next. Brilliant, Molt muttered. The pigeon's developing a social life. He ignored the gull's offended squawk and began laying out his gear. First, the anti-cold talisman, a carved bone disc etched with reptile folk sigils. When he activated it, it warmed just enough to keep him alive. It also smelled like burnt cinnamon. He hated burnt cinnamon. Next, the water-breathing spell. He dipped a finger into the copper-tasting ink and painted the glyph onto the outer scales of his throat. When he pressed two fingers to it, the glyph shimmered and sank inward, settling behind his windpipe like a swallowed spark. 8 hours of underwater breathing, if he was lucky. Then, the nictitating lens eye drops. He braced himself, tilted his head back and squeezed. Gah! Sir Phyllis's tail! They stung like betrayal. Everything went green for a moment. He checked the translation charm strapped to his wrist, still functional, still crackling faintly, still overdue for replacement, and moved on. Finally, the orb of illumination, a pale green sphere, rose from his palm and hovered obediently at shoulder height. He dimmed it to a soft glow, bright enough to see underwater, not bright enough to attract every sonar-happy tourist within a mile. Molt reached into his coat and pulled out a folded square of enchanted canvas, the sending sack, standard field equipment. He rolled it out flat on the boathouse floor. It twitched, then pop! A full sack of nest creature feed materialised inside it. He removed it. Another appeared. He removed that one. Another. 5 sacks in all. The feed smelled like fish food and wet chalk. Nest creatures adored it. He'd mixed the kelpie gleam into it later, once he had it. Ginny drifted closer, peering into the sending sack. Food? Not for you. Gin? No. She nodded solemnly, as if it imparted deep knowledge. Mr. Feathers suddenly became dead again and fell into Ginny's arms. She stroked his ghost feathers, and he flickered faintly, as if deciding whether to be alive again. Molt stepped into the lock. The cold hit him like a physical blow. The anti-cold talisman warmed, but only enough to keep him functional. He muttered something unprintable and waded deeper. Behind him, Ginny hovered at the water's edge, humming. She saw the ripples foam on the shore. Fluffy water, she said. Molt looked out across the lock. A tourist boat was trawling with a fish finder. A hobbyist on the far bank was lowering a sonar rig. A research vessel further out was doing acoustic mapping. Brilliant, he muttered. Exactly what I needed. He dimmed the orb to a faint glow, straightened his spine, and tried to look as log-like as possible. If anyone asks, he told the universe, I'm driftwood. Then he slipped beneath the surface. The world went green and murky. The breathing spell kicked in, making his throat tingle. He exhaled a stream of bubbles and began swimming towards where he knew the runestones should be. Reptile folk had a sense for old magic, a kind of instinctive tug, like remembering the way home. When he got close, he traced a sigil onto his palm with his finger. The lines glowed faintly, forming a rune detection charm. The water around him brightened with shimmering lines, ancient glyphs glowing through silt and algae. There you are, he muttered. The runestones were in terrible condition, cracked, overgrown, some glyphs eroded entirely. The magic flickered like a dying battery. Of course they're in terrible condition, why wouldn't they be? He knelt on the lock bed and brushed algae away from one of the stones. The glyph beneath pulsed weakly, like a heartbeat running out of strength. He placed his glowing palm over the rune and channeled magic into it. The glyph brightened, stabilised, and began to hum faintly. He moved to the next stone, and the next, and the next. By the time he finished, he was freezing, exhausted and furious. They should have been maintained better, he fumed. There, he thought. That will last a good few decades now. A shadow passed overhead. Molt froze. A huge shape glided through the murk. Long neck, smooth scales, eyes like green lanterns. A nest creature. Reptile folk adjacent, from back when terrible lizards really did rule the world. Not birds, not proto-birds, not avian-derived archosaurs, as the scientists like to insist with their charts and their smug little laser pointers. Molt had once sat through a lecture where a human paleontologist declared with great confidence that all the big prehistoric reptiles were basically chickens. He'd never forgiven them. Molt knew the research, he'd read the papers, he understood the phylogenetics perfectly well. He simply chose not to believe it. Some things were a matter of dignity. The nest creature's invisibility field flickered around it like heat haze. It circled him once, slow and deliberate, then retreated into the dark. A silent plea. Fix this. I'm trying, Molt thought. Believe me. He pulled out the Kelpie beacon, a carved whistle that made no sound in air, but sent a magical ripple underwater. He blew it. Nothing. He blew it again. Still nothing. He tried the old ritual call, the one his grandmother had taught him. A stream of bubbles escaped his mouth. Silence. He swore underwater, which produced more bubbles. Then, movement. Shapes in the dark, not approaching, just watching, judging. Kelpies. Shape-shifting water spirits. Horse-headed one moment, eel-bodied the next. Human-eyed the moment after that. Ancient, proud, bound by old agreements. Agreements the reptile folk had neglected. Kelpies used to eat humans, still did very occasionally if someone was foolish enough to step into the water at the wrong moment. Molt wondered, not for the first time, whether they'd ever dined on reptile folk. He decided he didn't want to know. He felt their anger like a pressure in the water. He sighed. The shape shifted, closed in, silent, ancient, furious. Molt exhaled a long stream of bubbles. Right, he said, let's get this over with. And the Kelpies surrounded him.